My wife and I, for the longest of time, she struggled to conceive for the longest of time. When it did happen, it happened when we were at the World Cup, 2023 World
Sure.
Cup. And we literally, so if we got to the World Cup on the Monday, Wednesday, I got a call back home that said, Timber, come back. Looks like your wife is going to give birth. I had to leave the team. And at that time, that was our preparation phase for the World Cup. So it was quite an important phase. Probably the best thing to have ever happened for me, the birth of the child. And then I left them quite early.
That's quite early, like a week, few days.
So she gave back on a Friday. Sunday I had to fly back.
You, the minute you get off the field, it's like you've been asked, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you do it this way? If I were you, I would have done it that way. How do you deal with that and not let it get to your head? Because I really think in human nature, it can.
Yeah, look, it's ruthless out there.
Yeah, it's tough.
When you see some guys crying in the changing room.
Sure.
In the earlier parts of my career, I struggled with it.
Yeah.
Especially the whole notion of being the first Black African batsman and then being the first guy to score a Test century and then also becoming captain and the narratives that came with it. I really struggled with it.
Yeah. Hello, Wisdom and Wellness family. I'm Mpoomy and I'm so excited to have you back on our podcast. Today, we have for the first time, we have a captain of a sport in our country, which is kind of a big deal. Today, we are with Temba Bavuma, known as the beacon of excellence and determination. Of course, he's the current captain of the Proteas, South Africa's national team, for those who don't know, cricket national team. He was born in Cape Town and he became the first Black South African cricketer to score a Test century for South Africa. And despite facing many challenges in his personal life and of course in his career, he has embraced the role of breaking barriers. He inspires the next generation and focuses a lot on discipline and leadership. And of course, more than anything, he is a father and a husband. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How do you feel every time you hear your bio and your achievements be read out for you?
I always wait for the parts that I haven't heard.
Okay.
So the first bit, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always wait for the other parts. It's weird. I never watch myself play. I never read about myself. So when someone is speaking about me, it's a bit weird.
Oh, yeah, I can get that. It's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, it's a bit uncomfortable.
For everyone here, I think you've done a lot of sports interviews and your career is all out there, but your personal life, not so much. And I think that's what I really want to touch on today and have a conversation about the person, the discipline and the consistency that it requires for you to be you. Because I think we look at someone like you and we think, he just wakes up at 7 a.m. in the morning, rolls out of bed and does whatever he likes. But to hold the position you hold, obviously there's a lot that goes into that. So before anything, what was your upbringing like the home that you grew up in, the kind of parents or guardians that you had?
I mean, like you said in the bio, I was born in Cape Town, small township called Langa.
Yeah.
Was born in a sports crazy family. All my uncles played cricket, football and other sports.
Yeah.
So the community as well, they love their sport. So I kind of grew up into all of that. Yeah, very, very privileged upbringing.
Okay.
Best of both worlds, I always say.
Yeah.
I know
exposure this side, but you also know what's happening on this side.
That side. And each side, I guess there's the pros and cons to it. Studied as well. I came out with a finance degree. That's something that I hold a lot of pride in.
Okay, what did you study?
Studied finance.
Fine arts.
Yeah.
Oh, finance.
Finance, financial management.
Nice.
Started at UJ. Yeah.
Nice. And tell me about the kind of child you were. Were you reserved or were you the naughty one or were you the smart one, the goody two shoes? What kind of child were you?
I think the shyness and the reservedness, that didn't go away.
Yeah.
Little bit cocky as well.
Okay.
And I think that came from always being the small guy in the friends. So you always felt that you had to act some type of way. But I mean, all of that's gone now. I was reminded of a text of mine. So I don't, if you remember in the school, end of the year school book, I think it was grade 4, grade 5, they asked us what we wanted to be when we were older.
Yes.
And in true cocky fashion, I wrote, I wanted to play for South Africa.
Jeez.
I wanted to meet the president and I wanted to be good at maths. I think I
Tick,
ticked
tick,
all of
tick.
those things. Yeah.
That's incredible. And when you were just, and I think that makes me interested in your parents. Were your parents strict? Did they encourage you to dream bigger? Or is it something that you were just born with to just think outside the box?
Parents were very strict.
Ah.
I mean, my dad, like he could see this whole cricket thing, but
Yeah.
for him it was all about
Skolo.
incwadi,
Yeah.
skolo, make sure you finish matric, go to varsity, and get into to the working world. My mother, she was a bit more flexible. And I guess for her, because her brothers, my uncles, they played cricket, she understood where the passion came from. So she supported a lot of my dreams. I finished school when I was 16.
Okay.
So I decided the next year to do a post matric.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't for that. He didn't support that idea. Didn't speak to me for the next 6 months. But my
Like
mother,
at all? Or it's just like, good morning,
no,
good morning.
see me in the house, walk past me. That was this. But my mother supported me as much as I can. And look, I think the cricket worked out.
Yeah.
I think that one of those, that decision contributed to that. Yeah, my parents were probably more stricter to me than my other
That's
siblings.
always the case with firstborns.
They always say that. Yeah.
Always the case. I want to linger a little longer, and I think it's important that we touch on it because I think you had your mother's support, but your dad wanted something else for you. And it doesn't mean that what he wanted was not a good thing, but it wasn't your passion. And I think we have a lot of kids who feel the pressure from parents. And I think a lot of people succumb and end up not chasing their dreams. For you, what did it do? Did it fuel you to see that, okay, my dad doesn't support me, so I have to prove him right? Did it breed any anger, resentment? How did you reconcile just from that moment? Especially because like now you're like the top of the top. Yeah.
So I think, I mean, now there's no resentment per se.
Yeah.
And I think then there wasn't any resentment. There probably was disappointment. But I think now thinking back at it, I understood where he was coming from. That's what he
Correct.
knew, right?
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
he got. That's what he got taught by his parents. That's what he understood that the road would be. So I guess from that side, you can kind of understand where it is. But I mean, now he's a part of the story, right?
Yeah.
My success is his success as much as it's my mother's success, you know. So I mean, we don't hold resentment or bitterness to it all. What I am kind of grateful for is that they never put any pressure with me when it came to cricket or any sport. It
Yeah.
was more of just go enjoy yourself. Probably more my mom, but more about go enjoy yourself and come back with the smile on your face.
Yeah.
If we happen to get good at it and get to the level that I am, then so be it. But just make sure you have a good time while you're doing it.
How has your parenting style of parenting, how has your parents' parenting style influenced your parenting, if at all? Did you go like, okay, what my parents did clearly work, I'm going that way? Or did you go the opposite direction?
I would say I'm probably maybe closer to my mom, who, I mean, she was strict in a lot of ways, but very flexible.
Yeah.
Wasn't dominating, you know.
Controlling.
Yeah, with my son, I mean, he's still young, right? So I think I'm still developing that parental style, but you know, you want him to grow up and do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Within certain confines, obviously. If he has a passion for it, you know, I'd like him that he does it to the best of his ability, but there's no pressure. If he wants to be a footballer, which I'd love, he can become a footballer as well.
So you still want him to go in sports? You're not just like, no, try another career path.
No cricket. I love golf.
Yeah.
Golf is a hobby of mine.
Yeah.
So if there were to
You
be
really like focus and long games. Because when I think of golf and cricket, it takes the whole day in the sun.
That's true. I enjoy golf. Golf, I only got into it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's just wanting to be as good as you can
Yeah.
in that sport.
Yeah.
I'm very wary of trying new things. There's this whole thing about paddle now, and guys have been inviting me. I know myself, I'm very obsessive. So
Okay.
if I start paddle,
You're going to
I'll
be in
be
the
spending
championship.
I'll think I am. Yeah, I'll think I am.
Have you always had leadership qualities? Like I think back to like my life. I think back to school, and every time they needed someone to raise up their hand to do something, and I was like, I was the first, you know. And I look at that as patterns of my life. And when you think to the patterns of your life, has leadership and discipline always been there? Was it something that you had to build up and work because of the space that you're in?
I think it's something that I definitely acquired or learned.
Okay.
In the classroom, I was always the guy sitting at the back. We were always the guys in detention.
Really?
I was never captain of any. Never captain of any team at school.
Prefect.
Definitely not a prefect. I was never on time to be a prefect. Discipline is something that I had to work on.
Yeah.
Probably got a lot better when I started going to varsity, and then you had to kind of manage the life of a sportsman, of where I wanted to be, and also the life of being at varsity, the social life, and everything that's nice but not so nice as well
Yeah.
about varsity life. So discipline really kicked in there. I never had any ambitions of being a captain.
So Temba, besides talent, you know, I think of my school. We were Word School, and your Word School is all about rugby and sports and athletics, and they're really big on that. I saw a lot of talented kids who were actually fetched from different small towns, were sponsored to play sports, but I don't see any of them in like national teams, even though that was the dream. So besides talent, what do you think it actually takes to make it that far in your career, not just in sports, but just in any career? What does it take, or what has it taken for you to be at the top?
If I look at myself, I think, like I say, I lived a privileged life. I had a solid support structure around me at school. That when I started to go off course, guys would bring me back in and just remind me, you know, of what this opportunity means. I think a certain level of mental skills. I mean, you spoke about discipline, work ethic, resilience. I think that's a big one. Being able to overcome whatever's in front of you. Ambition.
Yeah.
There's two type of black players, black African players. You get the black African players like us who've gone through your private schooling system, who are very confident in themselves. The self-esteem that's been instilled in them while they were in those systems. You don't second guess yourself. You know, you're able to walk into a room and still be confident about yourself. You don't think you
belong.
Yeah, you don't feel you have to prove yourself. And then you take maybe this other group of black guys who maybe say a guy is talented, but maybe he comes from Soweto, he comes from the township. When he comes into that environment, that culture of cricket, and the culture of cricket is pretty much white, you know. If he comes into that environment, there's a lot of adjusting that person needs to do.
Yeah.
And they don't always come there with that confidence in themselves. There's always that element of proving themselves, and it becomes hard. And sometimes that's where guys kind of get, you know, pushed aside.
Yeah.
And yeah, we grow up with that ambition.
Yeah.
And when you go, St. David's, the guys are speaking about being astronauts, being all of that. I go Gwalanga, kid doesn't know what an astronaut is.
Correct.
So the level of ambition is
different.
It's not the same. So, I mean, we benefited from that. And I think that's what, I guess it allows you to keep going through the tough times, but also even when you reach a certain mark, you still have it in you to keep pushing for higher levels. Yeah.
So how do we bridge that gap? And I'm glad you brought that up, because clearly it's not necessarily a discipline thing or a talent thing. Like you said, you learned discipline, you know, and so to not have as many kids or people who look like you and I at the top of the top, whether it's in corporate or in sports or just leading, it's clearly an environment issue. So you personally, as one of the main leaders in the country, what is your burden? How are you planning on bridging that gap, making sure that there's access, but not just opening the door, but making sure that once that door is open, now that you've been captain, all the young black boys are like, I want to be like him, I want to be like him. But like you've explained, they can have the skill, they can have the discipline, but if there isn't that confidence and that right mentorship, it's like you get to the top and you quickly fall. So what are you doing to make sure, or what can we do to make sure that we bridge that gap?
Yeah. So I think in my capacity, I have a foundation that I started in 2016, and essentially behind the foundation, it's all about holistically empowering individuals, talented cricketers that come from your previously disadvantages, and we use sport as well as education to do that. So we identify the talented cricketers, and then we put them into our partner schools. So like here in Johannesburg, it'll be your St. Davis, Stadiums, all those likes. And I guess for me, it's in a way trying to systemize my development. And I know
Sure.
the benefits that come with being in those systems. It's a bit of a, it also has its downside in the
Yeah.
sense that you're not exactly empowering
Yeah.
those communities, which I think is another challenge that, to be honest with you, I don't have the capacity for. I think now you're speaking to government and municipalities, organizations of those likes, but within my space, this is how I know how I can make a difference.
Yeah.
And mentorship is the biggest thing. So
Yeah.
with all the scholars that we have within the foundation, they have access, I have access to them. So we communicate, and they'll share whatever it is that they're going through. I'll share whatever it is that I'm going through. But I think for me, it's always just to try push the mind,
Yeah.
try think as big as you can. And it's weird how things start to happen. Like people speak about the universe listens and all of that, but things start happening, and the challenges will be there, the tough times will be there, but I feel like for me that's what's kind of allowed me to keep going, because I guess I've got this vision and ambition in my head,
Yeah.
that I kind of won't stop until it comes to life.
Yeah. So I titled this element "Getting the Prize." I guess becoming the person. It's nice, and I think it's nice. We all dream, and it's fun, and we dream, and we work to get there, and then you get there, and then you realize that, oh, it doesn't stop here. There's a whole lot of maintaining. There's a whole lot of growth that's required. It's almost like a new level's unlocked, where it's like, I thought I had mental capacity, I thought I had physical strength, but there's another level. So what does a day in your life actually look like? What is your morning routine? What does your day look like, a typical day?
So a typical day, okay, I'll give you an example for the next 2 weeks, because we've got the Champions Trophy or tournament that's
Yeah.
coming up. So I wake up in the morning.
What time?
Wake up in the morning around 7, 7:30.
Really?
Depends what time training is.
Okay.
I'll make my way to training. I'll do my bit with the coach. That's probably a 2-hour stint. After then, Dando is gonna have something for me to do. I get that out the way, and then from normally about 2 o'clock, I've got time to myself. When I could play golf, I would play golf.
So after training, you still want to play sports?
Yeah, golf is fun.
You're not going to take a nap, watch a show?
Golf is fun. Golf
Okay.
is fun.
Yeah.
But then probably in the evening, you have your supper, you sit with the family. Then I'll always try and make aside 30 to an hour, 30 minutes to an hour just for myself. I'm a big writer.
Okay.
I've got a book there where I just basically just write down my thoughts, whatever it is that I'm thinking about. I'll have a look at my goals, what my goals are. I'll visualize myself getting to the goal, what it feels like. Weird thing, when it actually happens, it never feels the same.
Yeah. The planning always, it's more exciting. The process and the dreaming.
Process.
It's more
the
exciting.
process is the fun part. And then that I'll generally do. I'll try to do it every day.
Yeah.
I'll try to do it every day.
What time do you go to bed?
Now I started going a bit earlier, 9:30, because the little one, he started nursery, so he needs to sleep a bit earlier so he can wake up earlier.
Okay.
But yeah, generally 10, 10:30.
So you sleep at 9:30 and wake up at 7:30?
I love my sleep.
Doesn't your back hurt when you
Yeah,
wake up
I love my sleep.
in the
But the
morning?
training you do, you better sleep as much as you
Oh,
can.
got you. The
Yeah.
intense training that you do. I wanted to find out. I mean, you mentioned your family. Are you able? Have you learned to be fully present with your family? And I ask that because I think you've got so much on your mind. Like you say, you're looking at. I think big tournaments this year. You've got the World Cup coming out, and I can imagine your mind is in strategy mode. Have you learned to be fully present? For your wife and for your child.
To be honest with you, I'm not too great with that. My wife shites with me all the time about that. I could be at home, but I could be still on a call with the coach or whatever, still speaking about cricket. So that's something that I'm trying to refine.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm away from cricket, I try to stay away from cricket. It's either we can go on holiday as the family and just take time out of everything. I think that's the biggest challenge for I want to say sportsmen, but I think of people who see themselves as high performers, that at some point something gets compromised.
Correct.
And unfortunately it becomes a family, which is why it's even more important that you get someone who's more than understanding.
Understands the vision.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that side of my life, I am trying to refine it and do it a lot better.
You faced a lot of criticism publicly and in real time. I always make comparison with the career that we do. We are on YouTube, and every time you upload a YouTube video, someone has something to say. Whereas someone in corporate, you get feedback once every quarter or whatever, so you're able to grow, make mistakes, change, etc. Whereas you, the minute you get off the field, it's like you've been asked, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you do it this way? If I were you, I would have done it that way. How do you deal with that and not let it get to your head? Because I really think in human nature, it can.
Yeah, look, it's ruthless out there.
Yeah, it's tough.
When you see some guys cry in the changing room,
Sure.
or in the bus, I think for me, I kind of learned to look a lot more inwardly. That belief, the self-esteem, the confidence, stick to that as close as you can. I'm not someone that has their head in social media, so I
Okay.
think that also helps.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. But I'm quite to myself. But that's something in the earlier parts of my career I struggled with it.
Yeah.
Especially the whole notion of being the first Black African batsman, and then being the first guy to score a Test century, and then also becoming captain, and the narratives that came with it. I really struggled with it.
Yeah.
But I think probably the last 2-3 years, I found a way to be content within the space that I am.
Yeah.
Understanding that with the leadership, there's people who are going to want you to succeed, and there's people who are not going to want you to succeed. And also, we live in South Africa, right? South Africa has its issues, and it unfortunately at times plays out when the team is not doing well, or when certain individuals are
When you
not
need the
doing well.
encouragement the most.
So I think, yeah, there's a lot of acceptance to it.
Yeah.
But I think you gotta, for me at least, stay a lot more inwardly.
Yeah. What does it look like? I mean, you've come back from an injury. Did you ever have, and I guess this is the mental game, feelings of this might be over for me, what next? And like, how do you deal with that? And especially one from a diversity perspective of how will I sustain my family? And secondly, this is your passion. You've worked your whole life to get here, and it's like in a split second, it can be taken away. So that's my first part of the question. The second part, coming back, how much pressure are you putting on yourself? The expectation, like how does that feel?
So I think that's probably one of the most challenging times, yeah, that I've been through. So I got injured. I got subsequent injuries from the World Cup, the 2023 World Cup.
Sure.
After the World Cup, I got injured a month later. Then 2 months later, I got injured again. All the same injuries. And I guess, like you say, you start wondering if, is this where it ends?
Yeah.
This is how the story ends, type of thing. And I think, sure, for a couple of weeks, it was dark for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. I don't think I was the nicest person to be around. But then, like, I mean, you go through all of that, but then at some point, you got to kind of bring yourself back to yourself, sit down, again, take out my book and be like, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we want to be. And then how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I did a lot of work in May, June, July, just trying to get fit and strong again. We played a game in August, all was good. September, I got injured again. Then those feelings came back again that, okay, maybe, you know, this is how it ends. But I think what I resolved on was that this is my story, right?
Yeah.
This is where I am in my career, with my body, age obviously being a factor. Let's accept it. Let's try work with the body. Let's readjust the goals and just accept what it is. And I think that with all that mental work, I walked away with a lot of content. I mean, you still had your ambition, you still had your goals, but I was very much, I guess, at ease with where I was.
are,
And I
yeah.
think that helped me in the next couple of months till today to perform the
Yeah.
way that I did. So whereas previously I'd put a lot of pressure on myself to say, okay, you're coming back from injury, you got to do this, that, and that. You got to score
Yeah.
this and that. Whereas this time, the feeling of still wanting to perform was there, but it wasn't as strong. It wasn't desperate. You know, it wasn't a sense of desperation behind it. It was more a sense of, sure, I've got another
Yeah, I
opportunity,
get to do this.
you know, to do what I've always wanted to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Let me do it as best as I can and enjoy it along the way. I don't think it's an easy mindset to have.
Yeah.
It's always, I guess, easier to speak about it after events.
Yeah. But during it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leading up to that, it's a lot of work.
I found that a lot of sportsmen and musicians find their identity in their craft, right? Which is quite a challenge because I'd like to think it's not a holistic perspective to life. And that's why when it's time to retire, then it's like, I'll go back until something dramatic really happens. Have you considered that? Because I can see like cricket is a big part of your life, and from just growth, have you considered that and who you are outside of cricket?
I think I accept the fact that, I mean, cricket will always, people know me because of cricket.
Yeah.
I mean, it will always be a big part of my life. I always have this thing in my head is that once I'm done with cricket, I'm done with cricket. And I'd like to be able to go into something else and be as good as I can
Yeah.
in whatever that is. Whether that will be possible or not, looking at the role cricket has played in my life and the contributions that I still want to make, I don't think so. But yeah, man, I'd like to make use of my finance degree. I don't know if I'd do well sitting in an office in a 9 to
don't think
5
so.
with the suit and tie.
Yeah, maybe you'll find different ways of dealing it. But I want to linger there a little longer. Is it's exactly what I've recognized, the same character trait that makes one as successful is who are you outside of the things that you do. So when cricket stops, it's not what's the next thing. Let's go do golf next. It's what happens if for 2 years you just have to sit at home and do nothing. Do you think you've built up the mental capacity and also just the self-identity to say, sure, I can sit for 2 years and not have anything to achieve?
I'd need a lot of money to be able to do
Outside
that.
the money, outside of money, you Temba inward.
I mean, I love cricket a lot. I think that'll be hard.
I can just see you like,
Yeah, that'll be
what
hard.
does you want me to say? Let's go.
No, I'd be a grumpy person.
Okay.
I'd need something else to kind of stimulate me and get me going.
Do you think you guys, and when I say you guys, I want you to think of it in the context of people who achieve the greatest heights. Do you think there's something that you're running away from and achievement seems to be the price? And I'm asking this because that's a question I had to ask myself when I had children back to back. So you've got the gift of not having of not birthing children physically, and so you don't take 9 months off where all you're doing is birthing a child.
Yeah.
And so I'm an A-type personality, and strategy, planning, goals, achieving. And then you fall pregnant back to back, and it's like you have to sit down, and all of a sudden my whole identity was questioned. And so that's how I'm coming to you. I'm like, what happens when you have your whole identity is questioned and your achievements are taken away from you? Who are you?
I think you got to separate yourselves from those achievements.
Yeah.
Like you say, for me, there's Temba the cricketer, and then there's Temba the person. People know Temba the cricketer, and I guess here now they'll probably start knowing Temba the person. But I think I pay a lot more attention, especially lately, to Temba the person. So, I mean, if I've got time off, I'll go on holiday. I'll go do things that I've always wanted to do. I enjoy music. I enjoy events. So if there's a international event that I want to go, if I get permission at home, I'll go. If she's free, we'll go together as well. So I think you got to invest a lot more in the person. Because if the person is good, then
everything else flows.
The craft should kind of look after itself. But I think it's a thing. I've seen it. Cricketer maybe retires, and then a year later, a guy's like, "Hey, I want to come back, guys."
It's like, dude, your time's over.
So you see it a lot. I think my time is also going to come. Hopefully, not anytime soon.
Are you gonna be fine?
I believe I'll be fine.
A little bit of therapy.
The fact that you're asking the question is gonna, once I walk away, I'll probably think, okay,
where am I?
How can we deal with this when the time comes? But I think I'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's a good question to ask yourself. It's a question many asked after COVID, where it's just like, oh, I thought I was fine financially, until you realize that your business can't survive a year without anything happening. So it's one of those life questions I tend to think of and sit with, considering my love for doing things. It's like, if everything was taken away, do I still like myself? Do I still want to be with myself? But this month we focused on self-discipline, self-control and discipline, which I think is a very important aspect. And we have a microwave generation where we think, you put it on a Pinterest board and manifest, and things happen. Whereas for you to be where you are, it's taken like almost 20 years of work, of seeds, where you didn't necessarily know where you're going to go. But consistency is an issue. And how do you make sure that you remain consistent? I can't imagine having to train every day for 2 hours for 5 years of my life. It's just the same thing over and over and over.
I think discipline for me is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Don't lean too much on motivation, because I mean that, like today I woke up and I was actually keen on going to the gym.
Yeah.
Yesterday when I woke up, I didn't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
But your discipline, that's the one that gets you to do what you need to do. I think also, as much as I've gotten to the point where I am, I mean, I'm not without any faults.
Correct.
I mean, there's been times where I've missed training sessions or where I've been late. So it's not a case of we have to be perfect at what we do, but I think you said it earlier, it's kind of find a way to be immersed in the process. I think the satisfaction is more in the process.
Yeah.
I'd need a little bit more time to put it into words, but for me, it just feels like if I look at the last 3-4 months, yes, it's been nice. You're scoring hundreds. The team's qualified for the final. You're man of the series and all of that. But what for me sits in my head is all the work that we did to get to that point.
Every day.
Those dark days, the sacrifices that you made, waking up in the morning for training, that for me is what kind of lives in my head.
Yeah.
The process, again, easier said than done.
Correct.
Because we all want things now, we all want things now. But I think finding a way to be immersed in the process and the love for whatever it is that you are you're doing. Yeah.
I love that. So to be consistent, to be immersed in the process. I think that's a good way
Yeah.
to put it. Be immersed in the process. So I have 3 non-negotiables for every day. One is I need physical touch, hugs and kisses from my family. 2, I need to have my alone time in the morning. This is like from 5, used to be until 7. Now it's like 5 to like 6:30, which just I don't want to hear anyone talking. It's just me and God. And then the third one changes over time. But for you, are there 3 non-negotiables where every single day this is a non-negotiable in your life?
So I think quite similar in the sense that alone time
Yeah.
could be in the morning, could be at night. Um, and then in that alone time, before 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 I go to bed, I'll always find time to pray, and then time with my son. Yeah, that
The
must happen. Yeah.
non-negotiables. So we know that Kobe was known for his discipline, right? Like I once listened to a whole podcast with Jay Shetty, and like even on holiday, like he's just going, and he's been admired for that. But do you think everyone needs that level of discipline, or do you think some are just gifted with it and they should lean into that?
I've seen YouTube clips on it. Sounds very extreme. Sounds very extreme. I don't know where you would have gotten the time to be a person, to just be a normal human being through all of that. I don't necessarily you need that certain level of intensity and extremity in your ways, but you got to be dedicated. So,
Yeah.
however way your dedication looks like, it will look different to me.
Yeah.
But it will get us to whatever that we need. There's everything else also that's needed. Talent is obviously needed, and he had that in abundance. I mean, physically, he was an animal compared to all the other guys. So
The whole animal.
I don't think you have to be that intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, unless it's your character, it's not
Yeah.
my character.
Yeah.
So,
You're laid back.
Yeah, so I'm not going to be doing what he does.
Yeah.
But I'll be intense in other ways.
In other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is my favorite question to ask has been, can you share a moment where the lack of discipline or the lack of self-control cost you something important?
Lack of discipline. Probably in my younger days, varsity days, enjoying the freedom of not being at home. And I mean, varsity, no one tells you what varsity is going to be like.
Yeah.
You can wake up whatever time, you get given your class schedule. They tell you that practice is during this time. You can come if you want or if you don't. And the first week, yeah, I think I went to one class.
Yeah.
At UJ, I think I went to one class.
Is it that week where Vits had?
Yeah, I think it's called all week or something like that.
Yes, it is.
I went to one class, probably went to about 2 of the 5 sessions at training. I wasn't selected for the team to play on the weekend.
Sure.
Coach pulled me aside. He was like, Temba, look, you got to tell us what it is that you want. Do you want to be this guy, this happy-go-lucky guy, or do you actually want to be serious at your game and do what you said you wanted to do? Yeah. So I'm happy that happened quite early.
Yeah.
In my career, but that's probably a moment where I couldn't say no to anything.
Yeah. Happens.
Yeah.
A lot of people miss class because of OEEC. I've never been to OEEC, luckily for me.
Missed out.
But I want to just touch a little bit on fatherhood and mental health and just really being a man. I've spoken up quite openly about having postpartum depression. I think a lot of women do. I don't think I've ever heard a man speak about having postpartum depression. And I believe you experienced postpartum depression. Were you able to name that this is what I'm going through? And also, what did it feel like? What does it look like for a man? What did it look like for you to be experiencing postpartum depression?
My wife and I, for the longest of time, struggled to conceive for the longest of time. When it did happen, it happened when we were at the World Cup, 2023 World Cup. And we'd literally, so if we got to the World Cup on the Monday, Wednesday I got a call back home that said, Timber, come back. Looks like your wife is gonna give birth. I had to leave the team, and at that time, that was our preparation phase for the World Cup. So it was quite an important
Yeah.
phase. I had to leave. Obviously, attended to what was happening back home. Probably the best thing to have ever happened for me, the birth of the child, and then I left them quite early.
That's quite early, like
'Cause
a week, few days.
So she gave back on a Friday. Sunday, I had to
Sure.
fly back.
Sure.
Got to training. Got to India. The World Cup was in India. We got to India the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're playing the first game. So from a preparation point of view, I was nowhere. From the cricket point of view, and I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't perform as well as I did. Now, when I left, the little one, he was in NICU, I think it's called. He was in NICU. So for
How
me,
many
like,
months was your
he
wife?
it was a month premature.
Oh, so 8 months, 7, 8
Yeah,
months.
it was a
Okay.
month premature. So I don't know what NICU is. I just understood the ICU part. And I mean, as soon as you think ICU, you think, okay, this is
This is
serious type of
serious.
thing. So
Yeah.
having to leave them there, her family is in Cape Town as well.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have family at that time.
Sure.
Unfortunately, her mother came in. She flew in the next couple of days and she was able to be there. So that was quite tricky, leaving them there in that situation. At that time, I'm at the World Cup. I have to deal with what we're trying to do here as a team. And then probably maybe like 2 weeks into the World Cup, she fell into a coma
Sure.
during all of that. And I mean to be told that over the
Over the
phone,
phone.
that, and now you have to make a decision that do you leave the team, and the team were performing to such a point where we were getting close to the semifinals or knockout stages. And I mean, it's a
Sure.
dream of mine, it's something that I've always wanted to do, be at the 50 over World Cup firstly, get into the semi-final and the final. Being captain was a bonus, or do I go back home and be, I guess, a presence of support because there's not much that I could do. And the decision then was, you stay with the team
Sure.
and we'll handle things over this side. No one knew within the team that something, and I guess that's us as guys, right? We, especially as Xhosa guys, we see as Guinea, we swallow things
Yeah.
and we deal with them internally. Now, during that, when all of that was happening, I didn't understand. I just thought, okay, maybe we're just going through a tough time, all of that. But only probably a month or 2 months later, after the World Cup, did I think to myself, okay, if I think of this day, you didn't act according to your character. If I think here, you weren't acting according to your character. The decisions that you make weren't what normal Temba would do.
Yeah.
And I think it's that maybe realization to say, okay, well, look, what you were going through, I don't think was normal.
It's two extremes, whether
Yeah.
good or bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't normal. And that's why you probably saw yourself out of character at times. So, I mean, I never got depressed about it. But it was more of a realization when you kind of sit back and you think, you're like, okay, I went through this.
Yeah.
But I also find, even if I knew in the moment what could I have done in the moment? Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the only decision really was to leave the team and go back home, And then I think my wife, because she knew how important that aspect would have been, it would have been another issue that maybe she felt that she would have had to deal with. But I don't know what I could have done in that situation. Could maybe have told one or two guys around you. But then again, you're almost like you're the captain. You don't want to
Sure.
burden guys with your personal issues.
Yeah.
Guys are also dealing with what they need to deal with because that is probably the most pressure that you're under. 50
Yeah.
over, actually a World Cup in itself. It's probably the most pressure that you are under. But yeah, I only realized
After.
a couple of months, only told my own parents, did I tell them? Yeah, told my parents a couple of months later that, hey, by the way,
By the way,
this is what was happening then. Yeah, my mother was shocked. Yeah, my mother was shocked. Yeah.
sure. Wow, that is so interesting. Do you feel the pressure and the need to have it together? Is that why you don't, and dare I say, let people in? You feel like people have their own issues. You want to just make sure you handle what you handle.
Before I was like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm a lot more content with just being yourself. You know, I'm a lot more at ease with letting people see what my flaws are. You don't think you have to show up a certain way. You know. Yeah.
So what
Now
do you think caused that? What do you think, why do you think you felt the need to, or at least, I mean, to be experiencing near death experience with both your child and your wife, and then a World Cup, and for you to feel like you have to hold that together? I mean, I'd probably be on the phone every 5 minutes. I'd just be like, my life is falling apart. And you, what's the word, the Xhosa word?
Iginya, to swallow.
Is that something that was instilled in you as a boy and that you had to hold on to until you realized that that actually is not a healthy way to deal with life?
I think it is. Yeah. I mean, a big part of us is from our upbringings, the experiences,
Sure.
the values that have been instilled in us. You know, I don't think all of them are bad. I think they've also stood me in good stead. Would I tell anyone if it was happening? It would take a lot. For me, it would take a lot for me. It would take a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a matter of your pride, or is it a matter of it's mine to handle?
Yeah, I think it's more that. I think it's for me, you know, it's kumthwalo wam type of thing. When I can't deal with it, when I feel like I can't deal with it, which is it's not healthy, right?
Yeah.
Then I might come out and say, hey, look, this is what I'm going through,
Sure.
type of thing. But like, what am I, if I tell you as my teammate or whoever is there at that point in time, what am I expecting from you? I don't need sympathy. That's the last thing that I
Oh, is that
want,
what
you
I
know?
was about to say? Well,
You know, I
it's
don't
a
need.
it's that support. And I think that's how friendship is built. There's always a joke on social media that says men's friendships last forever because they're not vulnerable with each other. It's like you guys get together, have a couple of beers or drinks or whatever, and you watch sport and you're like, oh, great one. Nice
Yeah.
one. And that the conversations always surface. So with women, it's like, yo, like you like,
Yeah.
you know, we carry each other's burdens. And I think that's what makes women's relationships, I guess, more in depth, sometimes not last longer. But it's that thing of I share your pain. And I think for like what I'm realizing as I'm talking to you is I didn't realize how hard it is and how much of of keeping things together is instilled in you. Because I look at my dad, and my dad, it takes him so long to say something is wrong. Like my parents he went through some stuff during COVID, and then he tells me in 2021, I'm like, this, I could have helped you just like that. But it's not innate. You know, for me, if I have an issue now, best believe after this I'm making a phone call. But for you, it's not. And I guess a part of me is just sad. And I've realized that I would see niyazenziza. It's not like you just decide to be like that. It's what was instilled and ingrained in you, that as a man you hold it together. You don't look for sympathy.
I feel like that's what's expected, or
Sure.
maybe that's what we put in our heads.
Yeah.
That's what society expects of us. Expects of us to be providers,
It's pressure.
physically, provide emotionally. That's what it's about. My dad has never come to me and say, hey, Temba, this is what I'm struggling with, you know. Uncles, I've never seen them do that. So where was I gonna see it from, type of
Wow.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's also the other side of it, being able to overcome certain things and being able to dig inside
Yeah.
and find the answers. I think there's also
sides.
a power to that. I think for me it's like that's what also kind of builds that confidence and that resilience in a person, that you've got full belief that whatever is put in front of
I
you,
can handle.
you can handle, but
Yeah.
you'll find a way to deal with it. The issue is in dealing with it, right? That's where the issue is in it. The issue is in dealing with it. But
Sorry.
I think there's also there's power in overcoming what it is.
There's
And
two
I think
sides
in
of
a
it.
way, like maybe it's us as men, we walk around it almost like as it's a badge of honor. You know, I don't, without me telling you that I overcame a certain thing, but like it's like, okay, yeah, you know, I
I'm
can.
him.
Yeah, it's a badge of honor in a way.
Do you believe in leading with vulnerability?
Of late, yeah. So I
Of
think
late.
with me, just being content and just being me, I think that's naturally come out.
Okay.
Where if I maybe think you know something that I don't, I mean, I'm not shy to say, you know, Mpoomy, you do this better than me. I'm not gonna try to compete with you, but can you help me get to this point, type of thing. Because maybe at the beginning I wasn't so vulnerable.
Okay.
Again, you felt you had to maintain, you know, a certain image, always seem put together type of thing. Whereas now, I guess I allow people a little bit more into what's happening in my head and
Yeah.
in my heart. Show my emotions a bit, but even there, I'll always be guarded. You know, not everyone who asks is because they care. You know, so I think with that as well, you don't necessarily have to be an open book.
Correct.
Tete yonke indo type of thing. But I allow people a little bit more
Yeah.
into my emotions.
I love that. I believe every organization has its set values that guide them, whether it's family values, belief values, just systems that way. And I mean, as the leader of the national team, you get to form part of those values, whether they're written down or not. But basically, what you do, everybody else is like, oh, okay, this is the culture. So what are some of the values of the Proteas that might not be mentioned in headlines, but you know within the team, these are values you guys hold to a standard?
Yeah, so I think there's values in and around the team,
Yeah.
and then there's values in the team. And I think we've spent a lot of time with the values in the team. What binds us together
Yeah.
as players?
Yeah.
You know, considering everything that happens, what's gonna bind us together? So more specifically in the test team, what we speak about is that what binds us together is that we all have an hunger to win games for the country. And we all want to be the man for the team. You want to be the man of the match. And I think like what I've learned in my captaincy journey, once you speak to players about issues that actually happen on the field of play, that's when you start getting a response. But when you solely speak about, guys, we need to be respectful, we need to be inclusive, those things they go over certain guys' heads. But if you speak about things that are actually happening on the field of play that guys can emotionally connect with,
Okay.
then you start getting
Response.
the response. Then you start seeing guys who start playing close to their best. And it's not to say we mustn't be respectful,
Yeah.
we mustn't be inclusive. Those things are important.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess it's a matter of language. Which language does
I
one
guess, yeah.
understand? Yeah. What keeps you grounded and what keeps you human, especially in the hype of everything? And we're going to the World Cup and there's an expectation. We're hosting, right? And there's an expectation.
2027, yeah, we're hosting.
2027, there's an expectation from you. And not to compare, I mean, with the rugby, it's like the World Cup. And I can imagine for you as the black captain, there's an expectation, but you cannot live on that. Otherwise, you will literally fall flat on your face. So, what keeps you grounded and what keeps you human and what keeps you following and trusting the process?
So I think just looking at my like my upbringing, like I said, being someone who's enjoyed the best of both worlds. Guys that I grew up with who were as talented as I was, some even better, but I feel because they never got out of the townships, they stayed in their system, they weren't able to realize or have the full opportunity to realize their full potential. So some of those guys are still my friends, and when I interact, when I'm with them, for me sometimes it's like, geez, maybe things could have been like the way that they've turned out for them. It reminds me of everything and everyone that's contributed to where I am. And it makes you grateful for a lot of things. It makes you a lot more, content. Content seems to be the word.
Yeah,
that
content
comes
seems to
about.
be for you. Yeah.
And even like with all the responsibility that's yet to come, I mean, all those things play in my mind.
Yeah.
Champions Trophy, Test Championship Final, and the expectation. But I always try fight it by coming back into the now, into this moment now. What is it that I can do today? Then tomorrow we kind of do the same thing. It's not easy, right?
Yeah, it's one day at a time.
Just thinking about it gives me a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you gotta come back into the moment and deal with what's in front of you.
Yeah. All right. We've got our wall of wisdom. Any quote or Bible verse that you live by?
Got a Bible verse. I think it's Jeremiah, definitely. I think it's verse 29,
Yeah.
11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you. Yeah,
Yeah.
plans to protect you.
Book or podcast that you recommend to everyone? Are you a reader? I know you said you're a writer.
I'm not a podcast person.
Okay. A reader?
Reader, books I read a little bit intellectual. So they're
Okay.
not, when I say intellectual, like I'll read on maybe like the MBA, like a quick crash course on the
That's
MBA.
not reading.
That's not reading.
That's studying. That is not reading.
Novels? Nah, I don't
Nah,
read novels.
not even self-help. Nah, you play golf.
Play
I
golf.
play golf. All right, I'm going to start the sentence and then you're going to finish it for me. A wise woman once said,
A wise woman once said, believe in yourself 100%.
believe in yourself 100%. Temba, thank you so much for coming and for sharing. I think what I enjoyed the most about the conversations that when I first I expected this crunch guy who's got this fixed routine and I think I got to understand that not everyone who gets to the top needs that personality, but I think your confidence and self-belief and just really understanding who you are is incredible. And I think, and I hope and I believe it's going to inspire so many people that, you know what, I could be laid back like you are and still make it to the top. Because there's a lot of pressure now with all the information you're receiving that you need to be this way, you need to be A, you need to be B, and you need to C to be C. But I love that you've just stuck to your guns. I love that you've grown in who you are. And yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Wisdom and Wellness family. I hope you enjoyed this episode.